Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of At Sree Show. I'm Sree Sreenivasan, Chief Digital Officer of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Today, we're taking our show on the road, and I'm coming to you from the Rosewood Sandhill Hotel in Silicon Valley. And there's no better person to talk about Silicon Valley with than Vivek Wadhwa, my guest, who is an entrepreneur and thinker about technology and the future of the planet. He's someone I've known for many years, and he has reinvented himself multiple times as an entrepreneur, academic, and as someone who is helping the rest of us kind of understand the world of technology. Vivek, welcome to our show, and thank you as always for your time.
Sree, Silicon Valley welcomes you. It's great to have you here in this part of the world.
Let's see. Your bio is so impressive, and you've done so many things, but things that might be interesting to folks. You've written about talent and how companies and the country can access top talent. You've written about the role of women in technology, their problems as well as triumphs for women in succeeding in technology. You're named by Time magazine as one of the 40 greatest thinkers about technology. You're named by Foreign Policy as one of the most influential global thinkers. But it'd be fair to say this is not how you started your career. Instead of being a thinker, you were a doer.
I started off as a computer programmer, to be exact, and later on I ended up becoming an entrepreneur because I had built some technology in New York at first Boston, which was world-changing, and it led to IBM funding a startup company. So I became an entrepreneur by accident. And later on in life, after having founded two companies, I had a heart attack and said, uh-oh, time to do something different. So I became an academic. As an academic, I've been researching everything from globalization to engineering education to how and why innovation works. And what brought me to Silicon Valley was trying to understand why is it that this is the most innovative place on this planet? Why is it that no one has been able to replicate it? I mean, New York is doing very well, but it's a distant second. It doesn't hold a candle to the innovation power and openness of Silicon Valley. What is it about this ecosystem that makes it thrive? And the biggest mystery to me was, why is it that people like you and I have done so well here? Why is it that you have foreign-born immigrants who are thriving? I documented that 52% of the startups here in Silicon Valley are founded by people who were not born here, who have weird accents, who look. My research documented that 52% of the startups here in Silicon Valley are founded by people born abroad, people who have foreign education, who have a lack of understanding of U.S. markets. How is it that these people come here and now start ending up, leading the largest tech companies in the world? If you just look at Google, look at the Microsoft. Look at the leading tech companies, and you'll find Adobe, you name it. You'll find either Indians at the CEO level or in the most senior positions. This is little India as far as innovation goes.
So what is the answer for that? We'll tackle, there's a lot of different issues in there, but maybe we'll start with the idea that Silicon Valley has not been replicated elsewhere. What are some of the conditions that made Silicon Valley possible? But this is really Silicon Valley sort of 2.0 or 3.0. How has it stayed relevant? What made it succeed first, and what made it continue to stay relevant?
Silicon Valley keeps reinventing itself. Every few years it burns down and you see a new Silicon Valley emerging. But the beauty of Silicon Valley is that it's a giant network. It's a giant information sharing network where people accept each other. Diversity rules that it doesn't matter where you're from. It's really the United Nations over here. So people expect you to be different. They share ideas openly. The job hopping is common. The weather here is amazing, so that you're very comfortable over here. You're not cringing. You're not freezing your butt off. You don't have to worry about commute. You go hiking in the afternoon and you come back to work. So it's the entire culture of this place, which is very different than anywhere else in the world, and which also tolerates risk taking and experimentation. Probably that's the most important lesson here. That when you allow failure, you allow people to try different things and do the most crazy things you could possibly imagine.
And then how did that translate into, with the initial sets of companies, but then along come the late 90s, the digital boom, the dot-com boom, and the bust. How did it survive the bust and then continue to be successful?
Because we just simply accept failure as something that happens along the path to success. That there's nothing wrong with failing. Yeah, fine, the economy is in the tank. Fine, our companies are worthless. It doesn't matter. We'll throw some more money at the problem and we'll do it again until we get it right. So you just keep reinventing yourself. You accept the fact that things will go wrong. You accept the fact that you will fail. And every time you fail, you learn from it. And you'll get smarter.
And in terms of this idea that others can succeed here, what made that possible? You know, when you say 52% were foreign-born, a lot of them are people who look like you and me. What is the secret of that? The previous generation who are not foreign-born, what allowed them to be so open?
Sree, first of all, it's the attitude of people over here that they don't look at where you're from or what your religion is. They look at what you know. Really, it's a meritocracy from the perspective of knowledge, that if you have something to offer, you'll be listened to. And the other thing is that you can, if you work hard here, if you prove yourself, you'll get accepted. I mean, I moved here about 5 years ago. I was a complete unknown. And now, everywhere I go, I have people, wanting to talk to me. I've become pretty well established over here. I'm able to take on the Silicon Valley mafia, as I love to call the establishment, and I'm able to challenge them, provoke them, rip them apart. And the more I do that, the more accepted I am here. In many other parts of the world, I'd get castrated. I'd get kicked out of the town. I'd be expelled. Here, I'm welcomed, and this is the mindset of Silicon Valley, that they welcome dissent, they will welcome differing opinion.
One of the things that I think of you, because you've only been here 5 years, your success was on the East Coast in the Research Triangle and in the Carolinas, for example. So I think of you as kind of an anthropologist trying to explain and understand this. The very few people who move after 40 to California and have success, you're of course not running a business anymore, but do you miss that part of it, that you wish you could have been also doing another startup? You've done startups before.
Sree, it's fun to start up companies when the companies succeed, but starting a company is really painful. I'm able to now make an impact. I'm able to get knowledge. I get to hang out with the most amazing people you'll ever come across. Not only the celebrities you read about, but also the next generation of entrepreneurs who are building world-changing technologies. I learn a lot by meeting with these people. So I'm getting smarter and smarter by being with these people. I'm getting younger by being with the young crowd over here. I'm having more fun, having a greater impact than I've ever had before. So yes, I mean, if I was 30 years younger, I'd probably look to start a company, but forget it. This is much more productive for me than anything else could be.
For parts of the world that are not Silicon Valley but have aspirations, New York, the Research Triangle, what are the Boston area, and then of course outside America, what are your tips for them? You make it sound like they'll never be as successful here, but they can be successful on their own.
Sree, let me shift gears now. Let me talk to you about the future of technology, because after I explain that to you, I'll be able to answer that question a lot better. See, today we have technologies we have not one but many technologies which are on exponential curves. We've seen how computers get faster and faster. The device you're holding in your hand right now, an Apple iPhone, is something like 30 or 40 times more powerful than the great supercomputers were of the 1970s. You're holding 40 supercomputers in your hand. Each supercomputer would have required, the computer the size of a ballroom, along with air conditioning, and you're carrying 40 of them in your hand right now. So this is the advance of computing. Everything that computing touches now is going exponential. Computers are being used to design faster computers. Computers are being used to now decipher and decode the DNA of human beings. They're being used to design faster sensors. They're being used to develop artificial intelligence. So you have a whole range of technologies that are expanding exponentially. And what happens with these technologies is that as they advance, they become cheaper, they become smaller, they become available to all. So now, for the first time in human history, we have the ability to solve humanity's grand challenges. When I say humanity's grand challenges, energy, food, disease, I'm talking about education, I'm talking about all of the things that have held back mankind since its inception. We will now be able to provide everyone with the ability to 3D print their food. That sounds bizarre, but we will be able to 3D print our food. We will be able to 3D print our buildings. We will have devices in our hands which monitor our health on a 24/7 basis. Imagine wearing a little band, a watch-like band that monitors your body's vital signs and uploads it to the cloud on your smartphone. And you now have a doctor on your phone, except the doctor is an AI who is looking at you 24/7 and advising you if you're about to be sick and how you can have a better lifestyle and live better habits.
So artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence-based doctors with sensors. And then imagine now having AI coaching you, teaching you education. Imagine having unlimited clean energy. I'm talking about anywhere and everywhere in the world having small devices that capture sunlight and that can power a house. And these devices costing practically nothing. So that energy becomes as cheap as cell phone minutes are right now. We don't worry about long distance calls anymore. We make all the calls we want. This is the world we're headed into in the next 10 to 20 years. This is not science fiction. I'm talking about what we're going to see happening in the 2020s. I'm talking also, imagine now wearing glasses that take you into holographic worlds. We saw this in science fiction, in Star Trek, in Minority Report, holodecks. You step in and at lunchtime, you're now visiting Mars. Or you're now visiting the Met, except you happen to live in Africa. Right, so this is all becoming possible right now, and these technologies will be affordable by all. I'm not talking about just the elite be able to build these technologies or to use them. I'm talking about anyone, anywhere. So this is all becoming possible now. Entrepreneurs can build these technologies. They don't cost much anymore. It used to be that to start a company, you needed millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars. Now you need thousands of dollars to start a company. And by the way, you don't have to suck up to venture capitalists anymore. I know how amazed you were when I told you that the VCs on Sandhill Road aren't looked up to anymore. They're considered to be inconveniences. I mean, people just don't even bother with them anymore. They come sucking up to the entrepreneurs now. This just changed over the last decade. Today, even the angel investors don't have the power because you can just go on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and raise capital, or you can just beg and borrow from your friends and family and start a world-changing company. Anywhere, anyone, anywhere can do that.
And therefore, these companies in other places, in other cities can do that.
Exactly. That's the point I was making, that innovation is globalized. That I'm seeing amazing advances coming out of New Delhi, out of Shanghai, out of Sao Paulo. All over the world we have advances. So forget about New York. Innovation is now happening all over the world.
Now, someone hearing you will think, if you're a technology optimist the way you are, that this is all great and it's coming, but what are the reasons they may not come? What mistakes will America make, will the digital people make, that none of this or some of this won't happen?
Sree, here's the scary thing. We can't stop technology anymore. It's globalized. What I worry about is the dark side of technologies. Everything good I talk about has a dark side to it. We have drones now, which are beginning to be used to deliver goods. Well, drones spy on us. We now have the ability to create synthetic biology, new organisms through synthetic biology that can cure disease. Well, we can also create organisms that give us disease. We now have the ability to 3D print, all sorts of common goods. We can 3D print weapons. I mean, every technology I look at has a dark side to it. And I've begun to worry as much about the dark side of technology as about the good, because at the least we're going to be wiping out entire industries. Financial services industry, 5 to 10 years from now, toast. Manufacturing industry, 5 to 10 years from now, toast. Communications industry, AT&T, Verizon, toast. And it's toast because of good things happening. I just take the example of the communications industry. You now have Google, you have Facebook, you have OneWeb, you have SpaceX, all working on providing Wi-Fi everywhere. Microsatellites, loons, balloons, drones to blanket the world with Wi-Fi. My guess is within 2 or 3 years that their products will work. Within 5 years, we'll start blanketing the planet with Wi-Fi. Why do we need the cell phone minutes and data from AT&T anymore? We're talking about wiping out AT&T. In financial services, we're already looking at robo-advisors that are being able to advise us better than our brokers can. We're now looking at digital currencies that can wipe out middlemen. we're talking about decimating financial services. In manufacturing, I talked about it's really not only 3D printers, but robots and so on. I see jobs disappearing en masse. Uber is working on self-driving cars. Most likely within 3 to 4 years, they'll get it working. And as soon as they do, they're going to start replacing hundreds of thousands of taxi drivers, Uber drivers with self-driving cars. It means overall, we're talking about 2, 3, 4 million jobs disappearing in the United States alone. What are these people going to do? We're not going to be able to retrain them in some magical new professions like the Silicon Valley elite want you to believe that they will. We're talking about unemployment happening. That's terrifying because it's going to create social unrest. The fact is that these innovations I'm talking about are happening everywhere. They're unstoppable because computing has already advanced to the point that everyone everywhere has it now. The people in the developing world now have smartphones like what you're holding in your hand. Cheaper versions of that, but still very powerful supercomputers. They already have the technology now to build the things I'm talking about. So the cat is out of the bag. We're in autopilot as far as innovation goes. Amazing things possible, scary things possible all at the same time.
Are you able to convince folks in Silicon Valley and elsewhere to pay attention to the dark side, or are they only, about the utopia?
Sree, I'm a thorn on the side of many of the venture capitalists over here. Mark Andreessen called me a Luddite on Twitter for writing an article about the jobless future. I love many of the folks over here. They are visionaries, they're brilliant, they're wonderful human beings sometimes. But the fact is that they don't want to look at the dark side of their technologies. They'd rather pretend that everything will be okay and they'll make it good and we'll suddenly create all of these new jobs and we'll figure out all the social issues and so on. But we won't. We need to have responsible people all over the world now holding Silicon Valley accountable for the inventions it's creating. It's not only Silicon Valley, it's people everywhere who are doing these inventions. We now have to be aware of the dark side of technologies and develop the policies and develop the laws and develop the ethical practices to make sure we use technology in a good way. Because I see two choices. One path takes us down Mad Max, total annihilation of the world. The other takes us to Star Trek. I'm optimistic we can get to the Star Trek world.
Well, we hope you're right. What is your advice for young people if they're in college or just out of college? How should they be thinking about their future?
There's never been a time like this to be young and educated and to be alive. This is that they have an opportunity to do things I would dream about. I mean, it's only this stage of my life that I'm learning about these advances and I'm seeing how much is possible. If I was graduating today, I tell you, I'd be doing a world-changing startup and trying to better humanity. I'd start looking into the issues that I'm talking about and seeing what can I do to make the world a better place. They can do it. During our days, we had to join big companies. You had to go down the academic line and become a stodgy old professor until you realize that, hey, I can go into the real world and start making an impact. These kids can do it now. They can do it when they're 19 years of age. They can do it when they're 25 years of age. They don't have to wait like you and I did.
And you also, speak of academia, you do a lot of work at Stanford. Talk a little bit about Stanford and what is so unusual about it that it has been able to change the world?
Yes, Stanford really is unique in that it's a microcosm of Silicon Valley. That it's the most open, interactive academic environment you'll ever come across. Professors routinely join the boards of companies. They routinely invest in their startups. You go around campus, do that while you're here. Go to the Treasurer Student Union there and just listen to what students are talking about. You'll be shocked that you have law students, you have sociology students, you have engineering students all sitting together talking about startups. It's the end thing. It's like one giant networking site. That's what Stanford University is. That you do have academic problems in that everyone is in their own silos and so on, but the silos are open silos. Anyone can interact with them, and the attitudes are much different than you see at any other university.
Tell me about how you communicate with the world. You have a column in the Washington Post. You're on Twitter. You're on Facebook. You're on all these tools. How did you decide, apart from the heart attack, which would change your life, how did you decide that this kind of writing, where you're now syndicated in 500 newspapers, that you're kind of satisfied with this kind of impact? And talk about the communication, what kind of feedback you get.
Sure, you'll be really surprised to learn this, but it's all your fault. Writing, I mean, I got to know Saja when I was a tech executive, and you inspired me to hang out with journalists and to start learning from them. And I started making friends with a lot of the folks at Saja and realizing that it's not that hard to write. So I started writing. And several years later, you said, Vivek, you'll be a natural at Twitter. You remember that? And I said, Twitter, what is this stupid social media thing? What would I say? What mindless things would I say in 140 characters? He said, no, Vivek, try it. You became my first follower, and I was the first. You were the first person I followed. And my first message really was, hello world, and then it was, Sree, thanks for getting me on this platform. So it's your fault now for getting me to this world.
Well, I take responsibility for that. And SAJA, South Asian Journalists Association, a group that I'm very much involved in. What is it like to be writing and being read all over the world kind of instantly with a site like the Washington Post? And why the Washington Post over another site?
Sree, writing gives you an amazing way of reaching the world. Now literally every time I write something, it reaches millions. Why Washington Post? Because it's read by policymakers. The work I've been doing is all policy-oriented. And Washington Post has come along so much over the last few years that now, at times, its readership online exceeds the New York Times. It's become hell of a force out there. And unlike the New York Times, they don't have the arrogance problems, that they don't have the legacy problems of trying to control everything that's written about innovation. So I've got fantastic editors over there who let me, given the freedom to express my views, say anything I want to say. And they coach me along when I need it. So I love the Post. I love writing because I really can make a global impact. I'm able to share ideas, shift debates, create controversies, hold people accountable, and do all this whenever I have time to knock something off.
Well, as we wrap up here, let's talk about two issues. One is the issue of diversity in the Valley. Certainly, obviously, we talked about a certain kind of diversity. There's more brown and East Asian people successful here than in many other industries, but there's a lack of African Americans, Hispanics, and women especially. So talk a little bit about that. And then the other issue I'd like to think about is what are some things for those people listening that they should be thinking about for in the next few years that are going to affect them on a daily basis? So let's start with the diversity issue.
Sree, Silicon Valley is imperfect, that it's a boys' club. Now, it's also an Asian boys' club, that anyone who breaks through the system over here becomes part of the network. It's highly imperfect, and I've been brutal about the problems and why it's hurting itself by leaving out important groups. So you see very few Hispanics here, you see very few African Americans here, and women really have not been treated well over here. So that's changing. The good news about Silicon Valley is that when you challenge it, when you provoke it, it listens. So this is a battle I've been fighting. This is a battle many great people have been fighting, is to increase diversity. There's a widespread awareness because I deal with the CEOs of many of the largest companies over here, and I've been coaching them all behind the scenes on how they can improve diversity and the importance of doing it. So they get it, and Silicon Valley will fix itself over the next 5 years or so. So I'm optimistic that Silicon Valley's strengths will help it reinvent itself. The other part of it is that the lessons to be learned from Silicon Valley are that innovation thrives in diversity. That you have to have freedom to take risks, you have to have freedom of expression, you have to be able to listen to people with different mindsets, you have to let ideas collide with each other, you have to share information, and you have to take the risks. If you do all of those things, anyone can succeed, anyone can now build extraordinary wealth, anyone can change the world.
And in terms of what we should be looking for, what are you excited about in terms of technology? We talked about very big things, but what are some more practical things that are coming down the pipe?
I'm seeing advance after. I'm seeing the healthcare industry being eaten by technology, which is a good thing because the medical system right now is geared towards keeping us sick. Think about it. Our doctors only make money when we visit them, when we get sick. So do our hospitals. The tech industry is interested in keeping us healthy 24/7. So tech industry is now getting into medicine. This is why you have the Apple Watch, which is a medical device. This is why you have Google now working on life extension and working on
life extension.
Life extension. Google is seriously looking at. Larry Page wants to live forever. Ray Kurzweil wants to live forever. They're spending billions of dollars on coming up with ways of having us live forever, being able to upload our brain, being able to develop nanobots that cure cancer. The tech industry is now eating the medicine industry, which is wonderful. So I'm optimistic about that. I'm optimistic now that we'll fix the problems of clean energy and that we'll be able to bring light to Africa, light to Asia, and now give everyone light, and then we'll have devices that everyone uses, such as what you have in your hand, and an iPhone type of device, which now runs apps which can educate people. We'll have AI-based avatars, virtual reality, holodecks, to teach us all about education. like I said, we're heading into an amazing future. These are so it's not one thing I'm excited about. It's not, it's not one advice I would give an entrepreneur. It's really look at your own strengths, look at your interests, look at a problem you can solve, and solve it. You can do it now. You could never do it before. You can do it now.
Right. Well, on that optimistic note, we'll say a thank you to Vivek Wadhwa, who is on Twitter at Wadhwa, and he is a wonderful read on the Washington Post and everywhere else that he publishes. Also, check out all his various talks that you can find very easily online. Vivek, thank you for your time and your energy and all that you're doing to help Silicon Valley understand itself better and make itself better. Thanks and good luck.
Thank you, my friend.
So thank you. You've been listening to an episode of At Sree Show. I hope you will check out our wonderful archives at PlayIt and also all the other great podcasts on the PlayIt network. And don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast service, including iTunes and everything else. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Great.
Yeah. Let me just pause this.
So I'm going to send you some videos to watch.
Yeah, that would be great.
Blow your mind.
Let me just pause.